Have you ever wondered about the man behind the infamous Blackbeard legend? Blackbeard, a name that echoes through the annals of history, synonymous with piracy and terror on the high seas. Yet behind this notorious persona lies an enigma, a shadowy figure about whom we know precious little. Edward Teach, or Thatch as he's also known, is the man behind the feared name of Blackbeard, a pirate whose reputation has outlived him by more than 3 centuries. However, despite his infamous status, the personal details of this man remain as elusive as a treasure map in a pirate tale. The lack of personal records, coupled with the reliance on often exaggerated and sensationalized accounts, has shrouded the real Blackbeard in a fog of mystery. What we do know is derived from court records, newspaper articles, and the testimonials of those who claim to have known him, yet these sources often conflict, and the line between the man and the myth becomes blurred. Was Blackbeard the ruthless villain he is often portrayed as? Or was there more to this man than just his fearsome reputation? Blackbeard's story is filled with tales of adventure, battles, and plunder. His life was one of rebellion against authority, a life lived on his terms. He was a man who chose the lawless life of the sea over the restrictions of society. But amidst the stories of terror and treasure, what remains largely unexplored is the man himself, his dreams, his motivations, his fears. What drove a man to become Blackbeard, the most feared pirate of his time? Was it a thirst for riches, a lust for power, or simply a desire for freedom? The enigma of Blackbeard is a puzzle that we may never fully solve. But that won't stop us from trying. After all, who doesn't love a good mystery? So, who was Blackbeard? Let's delve into his story. To understand Blackbeard, we must first meet Edward Teach, the man behind the legend. Born in the late 17th century, our story begins with Edward Teach, a name that would soon become synonymous with fear and awe on the high seas. Though there's much debate about his exact birthplace, many historians believe he was born in Bristol, England. A bustling port city, Bristol was a hive of maritime activity, and it's here that young Edward likely first felt the irresistible pull of the sea. As a young boy, Edward's life was shaped by the sights and sounds of Bristol's docks, the tall masts of ships, the smell of salt water and tar, and the tales of adventure and danger in far-off lands. It was a life that promised freedom and adventure, and it wasn't long before Edward set his sights on the Caribbean, a hotbed of opportunity for those willing to risk it all. The Caribbean of the late 17th and early 18th centuries was a world of danger and opportunity. It was a time when empires clashed for control of the new world, and fortunes could be made or lost on the roll of a dice. It's here that Edward Teach likely cut his teeth as a sailor, learning the ropes in the crucible of the War of Spanish Succession. The War of Spanish Succession was a titanic struggle for power, pitting the major European powers against each other. Edward Teach, like many men of his time, may have served as a privateer, a sort of legal pirate, sanctioned by the government to prey on enemy shipping. It was a brutal and unforgiving life, but it was also a school of hard knocks, teaching Edward the harsh realities of life at sea. With the war over, a new chapter in Edward Teach's life was about to begin. The seeds of the legend had been sown. The man would soon make way for the myth, the sailor would become the pirate, and Edward Teach would become Blackbeard. As the war ended, Edward Teach found a new path that would lead to the birth of Blackbeard. Emerging from the ashes of the War of the Spanish Succession, Teach found himself at a crossroads. With no war to fight, he sought out a new adventure. And it was in this search that he discovered the thrilling and dangerous life of piracy, the open sea, the thrill of the chase, the promise of treasure. It was an irresistible lure for a man like Teach. His entry into piracy wasn't a solitary one. He found a mentor in the infamous pirate Benjamin Hornigold. Under Hornigold's tutelage, Teach learned the ropes, quite literally, mastering the art of navigation, learning the strategies of naval warfare, and developing the cunning that would become his trademark. Teach's time under Hornigold wasn't just a learning experience, it was an opportunity. When Hornigold retired, he left his ship to Teach. The ship was a formidable one known as Queen Anne's Revenge, Armed with 40 cannons and capable of carrying a crew of over 300, it was a pirate's dream come true. Now, let's talk about the name that would instill fear in the hearts of many, Blackbeard. The origin of this nickname is shrouded in mystery. Some say it was derived from Teach's thick black beard that he often twisted into braids, while others believe it was a moniker he adopted to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. Regardless of its origin, it was a name that would become synonymous with piracy in the Caribbean. With a ship under his command, Blackbeard was ready to make his mark on history. As Blackbeard, Edward Teach became a figure of terror on the high seas. His reign was one marked by fear and intimidation, a reign that would leave an indelible mark on the annals of piracy. He was a master of psychological warfare, understanding that the mere sight of him could strike fear into the hearts of his adversaries. Blackbeard cultivated a fearsome appearance, one that would become synonymous with the name. His thick black beard covered his face, reaching his waist. He tied slow-burning fuses into his beard and beneath his hat, which he would light during battle. The sight of this towering figure, shrouded in smoke and fire, was enough to make even the bravest sailor's blood run cold. But it wasn't just his appearance that made Blackbeard infamous. His tactics on the open sea were just as terrifying. He was known for his audacious exploits, such as the blockade of Charleston in South Carolina. For nearly a week, Blackbeard held the entire city hostage, blocking all shipping traffic in and out of the port. His audacity was unmatched, his actions unthinkable. Blackbeard was also notorious for his mercilessness. He showed no quarter to those who opposed him, a fact that only served to heighten his terrifying reputation. His crew was fiercely loyal, following him into the jaws of danger without a second thought. This loyalty was not born out of love or respect, but out of fear. Such was the power of Blackbeard's reign of terror. But with his growing notoriety came a target on his back. The more infamous he became, the more enemies he made. Governments, naval forces, and even other pirates began to see Blackbeard as a threat that needed to be eliminated. His exploits had made him infamous, but they had also painted a bullseye on his back. But as his notoriety grew, so did the number of those who wanted to see him brought down. The reign of terror that Blackbeard had established would eventually lead to his downfall. But that's a story for another time. Blackbeard's reign of terror could not last forever. The downfall of the buccaneer known as Blackbeard is a tale as captivating as his rise. Edward Teach, or Blackbeard as he was more infamously known, had a failed attempt to retire. He accepted a pardon under the King's Act of Grace in 1717, but the call of the sea and the lure of treasure proved too strong. Returning to piracy, Blackbeard's flag once again struck fear into the hearts of seafarers. But his comeback was short-lived. The governor of Virginia, Alexander Spotswood, had heard enough of Blackbeard's exploits and was determined to end his reign. Enter Lieutenant Robert Maynard, a naval officer tasked with the formidable challenge of capturing Blackbeard. In the early hours of November 22nd, 1718, Maynard and his crew found Blackbeard's ship, the Adventure, anchored at Ocracoke Island. The ensuing battle was fierce and bloody. Blackbeard fought with the ferocity of a cornered beast, but the odds were against him. As the smoke of battle cleared, it was Maynard who emerged victorious. Blackbeard's death was as dramatic as his life. It's said that he was shot 5 times and suffered more than 20 sword cuts before he finally fell. Maynard ordered Blackbeard's head to be severed and hung from the bowsprit of his ship, a chilling trophy to serve as a warning to other pirates. But even in death, Blackbeard was not defeated. His legend lived on, growing with each retelling. Tales of his ghost haunting the seas where he once reigned spread among the sailors. Rumors of buried treasure left behind by the fearsome pirate still circulate today. The man known as Blackbeard may have met a brutal end, but his myth was just beginning. His downfall only served to amplify his legend, turning Edward Teach from a man into a symbol of the Golden Age of Piracy. With his death, the legend of Blackbeard was cemented in history. Blackbeard may have been a feared pirate, but his legacy is far more complex. Edward Teach, known to most as Blackbeard, was undoubtedly a villain of his time. His name inspired dread in sailors across the Atlantic and Caribbean. Yet, today his image has taken on a duality that is both fascinating and paradoxical. In the annals of history, Blackbeard is often painted with a broad brush as a ruthless, merciless pirate, but there's no denying that his audacity and cunning have also made him a symbol of freedom and rebellion against the oppressive systems of his era. He lived and died by his own rules, a trait that resonates with the human spirit's longing for autonomy and defiance. In the realm of popular culture, Blackbeard's influence is seen far and wide. His larger-than-life persona has been the inspiration for countless books where he is either the fearsome antagonist or the misunderstood anti-hero. His flamboyant image, the long black beard, the smoking fuses tied into it, and the multiple pistols across his chest, has become the archetype of the classic pirate. His presence isn't confined to the pages of books. The silver screen, too, has been graced by portrayals of Blackbeard, from the early black-and-white films to the technicolor extravaganzas of today. And let's not forget the digital world. Blackbeard has pillaged and plundered his way through numerous video games, further cementing his status as a cultural icon. The legacy of Blackbeard is a testament to the power of storytelling and the human fascination with figures who defy norms and live life on their terms. His tale, as chilling as it is thrilling, has stood the test of time, evolving and adapting with each retelling. While his life was full of violence and terror, Blackbeard's legend continues to captivate us, reminding us of a time when the seas were a world of their own. So, what can we truly know about the man who was Blackbeard? The veil of time often blurs the edges of history, transforming men into myths and facts into fables. The tale of Blackbeard is no exception. The notorious pirate has long been a figure of intrigue, his story shrouded in a fog of mystery as thick as the smoke from his namesake beard. The challenge lies in separating the man, Edward Teach, from the legend, Blackbeard. In the annals of history, the two have become so intertwined that it's often difficult to discern where reality ends and myth begins. Was he a ruthless marauder, a terror of the seas, or simply a man caught in the tides of times, made larger than life by the whispers of folklore? This conundrum is not aided by the scant and often contradictory historical records that remain. Documents of the era are, at best, incomplete and at worst, riddled with bias and exaggeration. The pirate's life, so often romanticized in literature and on screen, was likely far less glamorous and far more brutal than we'd like to imagine. Yet, despite these difficulties, it's impossible to resist the allure of Blackbeard's enigma. Scholars continue to delve into the mystery, piecing together the fragments of his life. Recent discoveries, like the wreck of his supposed flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, have offered tantalizing glimpses into his world, and every new artifact unearthed brings us one step closer to the truth. The enigma of Blackbeard is a puzzle that perhaps will never be fully solved. It's a story that has been told and retold, each time with a new interpretation, a new embellishment. Yet in the end, this is part of what makes Blackbeard so captivating. In the end, perhaps the mystery is part of what keeps the legend of Blackbeard alive.